the luxury of self-destruction to be self-aware. Why my malfunctions into disreverse? Smile, I walk to get a drink from the machine. Why my malfunctions? The luxury of self-destruction to be self-aware.
Hi, Ray.
Hi,
Good
Melvin.
morning, good afternoon, good evening to
And good
everyone
night.
joining us, and good night. Welcome, everybody, to our next round of cocktails. This time, we are graced with the ever so beautiful, ever so lovely Miss Rachel Vitullo. How are you, darling?
I'm good, Melvin. How are you?
I'm very well, Rach. You must be so exhausted right now.
Very. Trying to get back into AU time has
Yes,
been
yes.
tricky,
For
but
those
we get
who
there.
are joining us, Rachel and Jamie Lee actually just spent, how long was it? You guys were with us a week?
5 days?
5 days in Copenhagen. What'd you think? Did you love it? What'd you think of
Oh,
Copenhagen?
Copenhagen was unbelievable.
Yeah.
It's like it I didn't get the culture shock that I thought I would, but I still did. Like, it kind of still feels like home being there. And I think because maybe everyone, like you and everyone in office that was originally here in Australia are there. So it kind
Yeah.
of felt like I was still in Australia,
Yeah.
but in the best way possible. Like, I was so comfortable in Copenhagen. I loved it. It kind of felt like at the end of the trip, it was kind of like a little bit of a breakup where it's like,
No, it did.
was
I felt really sad. It's like,
same, but I was like, are we still going to be friends? Are we still going to message each other?
yes, we will. Hello.
Well, here we
Okay.
are.
So thank you, everybody, for joining us. Just a few housekeepings. If you have any questions, please put it on the comments. Rachel and I will be reading these questions that you have for us. Today really is about color. Rachel is going to take you through her tips and tricks on how to really maximize choosing 11 Australia color. But I guess one thing before we start, Rach,
Yes.
introduce who you are, what you do for 11 Australia. We want to know who Rachel is.
Okay. So, hello again. So, I am the global brand artist for 11 Australia. I have been with 11 Australia since we first launched in 2011 with our first product, Miracle Hair Treatment. And I have been along the journey with product development, with the styling range, development with the color. I've helped shape the EDU. I've traveled all over the world with 11 Australia, doing incredible shows and education. And I am based in Australia. So, really honing in on everything that we do here in Australia, which is amazing.
Hmm?
I've been a hairdresser for over half of my life, and I have really honed in on 11 Australia colour and really submerged myself in it as a whole, and have had the ability to play with it and use it in the salon floor still to today. So I still use it all the time with all of my clients. So I've had a lot of time with it in real time too. So with clients all the way from when we launched to where we are now, with the trend changes and what people are wanting, and being able to use 11 Australia colour through the whole way.
Yeah. And I loved it. And I think, you help shape the color as well. And I think it's such an exciting, I think this is why it was important for me to have you and Jamie Lee over in Copenhagen, for them to see how you use the color and how Jamie Lee uses the color. Because I think we use it so differently, the three of
Yeah.
us. And this is what today really is about. Walk us through what you're going to take us through today, Rach.
Today I'm really diving into colour contouring. So colour is the most personalised it's ever been. And what I mean by that is a client wants to look and feel their best. And it's not just a one fit for all anymore, where not every single client is having a traditional half head or a traditional full head of foils and the same like zone toning or root stretching or root tapping or whatever language you'd like. It's really a matter of looking at the client as a whole, their lifestyle, their face shape, their eye color, their skin tone, their existing hair, the way the hair is cut, and contouring and highlighting and personalizing the color to suit them. And I think a nice message to give across to clients, which my clients have loved, is I have the ability to personalize the color to them, which just means nobody else will have that color. And that color is tailored to exactly who that person is and how they look and what can make them look the best, which I think is really nice. Like, clients want to feel special when they come and get their hair done, and they want to feel amazing. And by just those little elements of language where just expressing that what anyone is doing on them is tailored to them just makes them feel good.
Yeah. I love that. And I think walk us through, like, how do you start these conversations with your clients? Like, how does it begin?
I always ask the question on how would you like to look today?
Oh.
And I think that question, how would you like to look today, Melvin?
Pretty.
Very pretty. That question is stronger in the response that you're going to get than what are we doing today? Because I think we all almost need to shift into the question that I ask on how would you like your color to look today, or how would you like to look today? Because asking the client, what are we doing? They're not going to know technique, and they're not going to know an application or a specific reflect or a specific level, but they're going to tell you how they want to look.
Yeah.
So how would you like your color to look today, or how would you like to look today? And the answers that you're going to get are either lighter, darker, warmer, cooler, more lived in, more intense.
Yes.
So that's a perfect place to start in saying, how would you like your color to look today? Or how would you like to look today? And like I said, they'll just come back with, I want to look lighter, or I want to look darker, or I want to look richer, I want to look, and then that's the perfect place to start. From that moment, I break the hair up, and just if it's backwards, the camera's backwards.
We're having some technical difficulties trying to
This
arrange
way.
the camera.
Yeah, this way. The camera's backwards, so everything's flipped. So I break down the hair into two sections, and I look at the new growth, so that new hair that's grown through, and I look at the existing. So we break that down into two sections where I will talk about the new growth. Would you like that lighter, darker, warmer, cooler, or do you love it as it is? Figure that out, work on the next. What's existing in the mid-lengths and ends? What we see here. Where are we going? Are we going lighter, darker, more lived in, more natural, more intense, that way? And I feel like breaking that up into two sections is a really easy way to navigate the entire head on what you're doing.
Yeah.
So once we figure out where we're at there, and and we will dive into it a little bit more as we go in, but this is where the professional comes in the sense of they will give you an idea and then you tailor it.
Yes.
And you say, in my professional opinion, with your eye color being this color, or with the clothing that you wear, or the colors that you like to wear, or the lifestyle that you have, placement in this way, highlighting here, adding some shadow in through here, adding this tone is going to complement, going to do this, going to do that. And it's a lot of information passed through and a lot of back and forth conversation. And I always, always, always make sure at the end of my consultation, and whether there's, images to help, because what my trained brain and eye thinks and looks is very different to a person that is not.
Yes.
And I don't go in expecting for them to know what I know, because they haven't trained as long as I have. It's not their profession. So I don't expect them to know. So that's why I think images are really important. But I will always recap at the end of the consultation to recap what we spoke about this is how you're going to look today. Like, is that all good? You cool with that? Great. Amazing.
I like that. I really like that you, at the end of it, you recap, because I think sometimes we get so overwhelmed in the salon or when you're that busy that you go, okay, I know exactly what they want now. Go straight to the back room, start mixing color.
Yeah. And then I will always, in my recap, will explain the application. I am going to highlight. I am going to add some darker pieces through. I am going to foil through the root, or I am not going to foil, just to make sure, just to recap, what you see in your natural is going to stay exactly the same. And what we're going to do is pocket in through here. So I really make sure that what is going on in my brain, they completely understand what is going to happen. So then there's no miscommunication at the end of the service.
Yeah. And how do you overcome, let's say, everybody sees color very differently.
Very.
The way I would describe color is different to how you describe it. And I think as a young colorist coming into our color world, how do you get around the challenges of explaining color to the client? Like, for example, there's many different shades of blonde. So how do you, Rachel, explain the many different types of blonde that you can actually receive in the salon?
I feel like if I'm communicating with a client that isn't understanding like specific tones, for instance, like perfect example, caramel.
Or for our Americans, caramel.
Caramel. If you look at a piece of caramel,
yes,
it's orange.
yes.
But for what a client wants to be caramel is neutral.
It's almost like it's a latte that they see, isn't it?
Literally, latte, exactly. But then there's strong latte, weak latte here in Australia. We are very specific with our coffees. Another perfect example, chocolate brown.
Yes.
Looking at a piece of chocolate is flat. There is no reflective tone in a piece of chocolate. But chocolate, through the years of color and conversation and talk and language, chocolate seems rich, right? And warm. And
tiny.
So it's explaining those real-time situations to a client. You ask them, looking at a piece of chocolate, it's quite flat. So what you want, what your language needs to be is rich brown. And it's just educating that way. With that said, if you're an emerging colorist and you're put into a situation where you don't have the confidence yet to have that conversation with a client, images are your best friend. And if you can't find the exact image of the color that you want to execute on the client, zoom in on the spot or talk about when you explain the photo. I like to say, don't look at the placement, look at the color that you see.
Yeah.
So let's not look at placement, because if you can't find the exact thing, it's important to let them know it's not going to be this. Don't look at where the color is placed, look at the tone that you see, or vice versa. Don't look at the color that you see, look at that lightness and where it's placed.
Nice.
Visual images are the easiest way for a client to be like, yeah, that's exactly what I need, or no, I need something different.
Yeah.
And the good thing about that is because if you've executed something that is exactly what the client would like, but then they see it on themselves and they don't necessarily like it, you have that visual image to say, this was the image, this was the tone that we spoke about, color we can always change. If it's not something that suits you, it's got like that doesn't necessarily have anything to do with the consultation that we've had. Your job you've done very well.
Yes.
You've got that image behind you to kind of back you up at the end of the service to show that that communication was clear.
Yeah, I like that. And I think especially now everyone has their phone. You can create a library of different tones and images that you can actually do in the salon. I think it's almost like a service menu now, right?
Exactly. I have on multiple social platforms. Pinterest is one of my go-tos.
Yeah.
And I actually have albums of copper, red, dark brown, medium brown, light brown, dark blonde, light blonde, warm blonde.
Want to share that Pinterest with us so we can use it?
I sure can. I'll take them all off private.
Yeah.
And that is like my guide. So rather than sitting there in the consultation looking for the right thing, I've got it all placed in my albums, and I can just tap into one and say, let's go through these together and you tell me which one you like. Because then allowing the client to have choice too and feel like they've had an input in the consultation and like the image choice too, that they feel better.
Yeah, and I think that's a really good point that you said there, Rach. Giving the client an input and getting them to really talk to you about the color, how they actually want to wear their hair, and if if it suits their lifestyle as well, I guess.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I will always tell my client that when a client leaves the salon floor, they are a walking representation of me. So essentially, I'll never let you leave ugly.
No, no, Rachel will never leave you
That's my
walking out of
reputation.
the salon looking ugly. Okay, well, should we begin, Rach?
We
A
should.
little color consultation and also color contouring session with you.
Yes.
So what Rachel's gonna do is Rachel's gonna take you through how many images we got? I think we've got 4 images that you want to take me through. And this is all gonna cover, blondes, darks, reds. So we've got an array of different tones. And Rachel will be color cocktailing with you all, which we're very, very excited about. So, I mean, again, team, if you have any questions for us, please drop them down on the comment section, and then Rachel and I will go through them.
Okay.
Oh, did you love that little intro I just did?
I love that. I was like, oh, and I was about to jump in, then I went again.
I mean,
So,
this color though. If you don't know who this lady is, Hailey Bieber. She's got amazing, beautiful hair.
and I think what I wanted to do with the 4 images today was put on images that I know are very much asked for. And I wanted to talk formula technique from going light to this color and dark to this color.
Mm-hmm.
So I wanted to give as much education and formulas and techniques as possible.
Yeah.
So I wanted to tap in either way and talk about real time. So, Miss Hailey Bieber.
Miss Hailey
As we
Bieber.
know, she is a very popular color client inspiration. And this much celebrates golden warmth more than ever. Hence the 0.03.ng. So I wanted to put on here the tone that you see, and I'm going to talk through some different formulas. The one thing that I want everybody to keep in the back of their mind is why I haven't written a specific formula is purely honing back into what I was saying in the beginning is color is the most personalized as it's ever been. And what I may formulate and talk about today may not be achievable on every single client that sits in the chair. And I think that's really important to keep in your mind. I'm going to talk through some options, but I think when referencing this image in particular, keeping a natural gold in the back of your mind, depending on the level of depth that you're working on, natural gold is what we need. So like I was saying before, 03s are really popular in transitioning from dark to light and light to dark. So we'll start off with going from blonde, extremely blonde, into the Hailey Bieber Golden Blonde.
Yes.
In a situation like this, and a client comes in and they haven't had foils to the root. So when I say going from blonde, it's a client that has had like a traditional foil set for a long time and wants to dive into something a little bit more natural looking. A client would come in essentially with a 6 to 12 week regrowth. So you're looking at about, and the camera, you're looking at about from about here to there of regrowth normally when a client wants to transition. So you need to look at the natural depth first. Like I was saying, break it down, the natural depth first, and then what's existing. With what you see, and depending on the natural depth, we can say that the client is sitting at around a 7 level, just for easy. We'll start off with a 6, and we'll go a little bit difficult. So say your client has a natural 6 level, which is in that medium brown world, and then they've got very blonde ends. Like I was saying before, separating that new growth into the ends is really important. As you can see in Hailey Bieber's colour, her end result in the root into this section in through here sits at about a 7 level. So understanding that the client's natural depth is a shade darker than what we see, that's conversation we need to have with the client. Hailey Bieber, beautiful, stunning as ever. There are a few options we can do. If you're wanting something the most low maintenance, we can keep your natural depth, and then we can create that golden blonde in your existing color into the mid. So you get a really nice fusion of your natural as it goes down into this beautiful golden color. That way you don't see any regrowth at all. You can talk about shifting the natural base, and in that way you could either go in with the demi-permanent liquid color with 4% cream developer, or you can go into the permanent side. So there's choice there, and it's all depending on how much shift you want. So if you're wanting to shift the base slightly to bring out and expose some of that beautiful golden tone that it will, but your client still wants something a little bit more softer to grow, is when you can go in with the demi-liquid. If your client wants this exact 7 level on the root, is when you'll go in with the permanent. So figuring out which direction, there's choice. If your client is still unsure whether they want to really dive right into this, because talking color shifting and going deeper can be quite tricky to shift out, you can even go in with a more spaced out, or in Australia we call it scattered, foil set, where you still foil and break up that base, but then you just use the demi-liquid glossing surface at the base end and tone down, so you still get tonal variation in on that root area. So much choice, you know, and that's when I was saying it's not just a one fit for all, and it's really listening to the client, really understanding where they want to be. So I'm going to talk formula in a second, but I want to talk placement first. Is that okay?
Of course.
Amazing. So let's talk. Okay, so we've discussed options in that new growth area and what we're going to do there. Now let's talk the existing. In the image, it shows that there is a lot of saturation of an 8-level golden blonde on the ends. And that's what you need to talk to your client about. As you can see on the mid-lengths and ends, it looks like it is just that one tone of golden blonde.
Yeah.
Would you like to see highlight and contour? Some high pieces and some low pieces popping through, or do you like that feels very solid on the bottom? In here, you can talk about the client's face shape, eye color, skin tone, and potentially talk into creating some poppy pieces around the front or having that depth drop down. And that's all in your professional opinion on what you think will suit the client the most. And the language that you use is, anywhere on your face you want to shadow and hide. A lot of the time it's the forehead. Yeah, a lot of the time it's the forehead. If anyone says, oh, it's my forehead, or my
forehead,
or my 5 head.
That's right, you put a fringe on it.
Yeah, cut that in.
Yeah.
So this is where I would go in and contour, and I would say, okay, I'll ask the question, because they're always going to tell you where they want to hide.
Yes.
So I always ask them that first. Where on your face do you want to hide shadow? It'll be around the jaw potentially, if they want to like slimline their jaw, around their forehead. And then I'll say, great, where do you want that pop to be? And more often than not, it's their cheekbone or their eye.
Your eyes, yes.
So this is where we talk about where placement is. And as you can see on Hailey Bieber's color, there's a really fine, soft piece of light around the front. But as you can see on Hailey's, it starts right at that cheekbone area. And that's because if you look at the depth of her eye, you look at her brow, if she were to have light placed really high, it would throw a lot of that off. So having the depth in from here down to that cheekbone area is putting the focus right in that eye. And then having that highlight from the cheekbone down is highlighting in on the lip area. And you can see how, looking at Hayley at this image, if that light was popped up higher, there would be no focal point at all. So you can see that the direction goes right into the eye because there's depth laying near there. And they're things that are really important to talk about with your client, is placement, where you want highlights, lowlights. So say, for instance, the client wants some of the depth that you're applying in on the root. They want pieced through to create some tonal texture, some highs and lows, some contrast, is where you go in and talk about adding low light foils and hiding away some pieces first. Keeping in mind, this is a blonde client going to this. So you would go in and add some low light, some weave through, depending on how thick the hair is on the bottom. A really nice tip is, if you're unsure on where to place the low light, weave out where you want it first, brush the hair that's left out and look at it.
Yeah.
Because essentially what you've weaved out is what's going to be your depth. So if you completely pull that out of the way and you look at what's going on, you think, is that enough? Is there still enough light? Or have I taken enough of that depth out? What you see left hanging is what's going to stay blonde at the end of the service. Weave it out, pull it out of the way, take a step back, have a look. Is that enough or is that not enough? And that's how you're going to know where the placement of the depth is going to be.
And what's your favorite low lights to use in the salon, Rachel?
Formula.
Yeah. Or just like, what's your go-to?
I love to use, in the demi-liquid, 4%, the 7.03 7NG.
Yes. It's
When
just
you
such a
are,
beautiful tone, isn't it? Like,
it
it's
is.
just, it's like one of those tones where you're like, it's just gonna do its job. I think every time I've used it, I was like,
It's just like, what I keep in my mind is, when you're going from light to dark, you need to redeposit pigment that you've lost from going dark to light. And that's what's really, really important when you are shifting down.
yes.
The longevity of the low light that you put in there, you need to make sure that pigment is in there in order for that color to last as long as it needs to.
Yeah.
So some cocktails I like, for Hailey Bieber's sake, like Melvin just put up before, the 703 7NG is beautiful. Now, if you're wanting to purely celebrate the gold only and really have that gold reflection going through, a cocktail of 703 7NG with either 8MT 8.7 or 6.7 6MT is a fantastic cocktail. What that does is like neutralizes everything, but just celebrates the gold.
Yeah.
Now, depending on how much you need is going to vary between the client. So if your client is at a complete 10 level creamy blonde, you would go 2 parts 703 7NG to 1 part 8.7 or 8MT.
Mm-hmm.
If they've got a lot of the golden warmth already in there, then you would go in with an equal part.
Yes.
But it's really just depending on where the client is sitting at the moment. So depending if you want that 7 to an 8 level, or if you know that blonde is really porous and you know it's just going to soak everything right on up. Melvin always gets me to go, say that again. And I go, really soak that up. Just to cover yourself and back yourself a little bit. It's always, and that's just science.
Yeah.
You know, it's just a hair that's extremely porous or really over processed. Sometimes it can just really soak in that color, really drop it down without you being aware, and then you're like, oh no. So just to back yourself a little bit, I would always go up half a shade just to ensure that, because I can always go deeper if I need to, but to go back can be tricky.
Well, a little trick that I do is I'll add a little bit of clear to the mix just to kind of if I know that hair is just like, as you said, so porous that whatever I put on it, it's going to suck it up. I just add a
Yeah.
little clear and it helps. It really does help.
It is. It's clear is such a game changer in my color work.
Yes,
Once
yeah.
again, it's just backing you
Yeah.
in ensuring that what's going on in here goes on there, which
Exactly.
is really nice. So,
And
yes,
like, tell us, like,
yes,
you're a big user of your 4%. You love using 4%.
yes,
You and I do. I feel like,
yes,
I don't know. I've done it. I think done are the days where everyone's using 2% and 1.9%.
yeah,
Everyone just wants, clients want to see saturation of color.
yes.
So, excuse me. When do you decide, Rachel, when to use 2 and 4?
Okay. If I'm toning on or glossing on the same level that my choice of gloss is,
Mhm.
I will go in with 2%. So
Yep.
if I'm on a 7 level, glossing on a 7. If I'm on a 10, glossing on a 10. If I'm on an 8, glossing on an 8, 2%. If I'm using a high fashion color, like I'm playing with pastelizing pinks and purples and things like that, and I'm doing it on a client that wants to completely change in the next appointment, I will go in with 2% because I know that that will just wash away faster.
Yes.
So then I've got some clients that come in and their blonde hair is their white canvas, and each time they come in, we change it.
Yeah. They swap and change every visit.
Yes.
Yes.
So if I'm on the same tone and glossing on that tone, if I'm on a specific tone, glossing on that same tone, it's 2%. Every other time it is 4. If I have a client that is sitting at a 9 level and just wants to like pump out the ends a little bit and brighten them up, 4% with a 10 series is unbelievable. If I'm taking a client from light to dark, if I am shifting their shade by half, if I am zone toning or root tapping or root stretching. So if I'm deepening down, it is always with 4%. I am using 4% 85% of the time.
I love that. That's so good. I love it. Good.
So let's talk her ends. Let's talk Hailey Bieber's ends.
Yes.
Yes, that old thing. Once again, like I said, you can see that beautiful gold reflective tone. But what I want you to really look into is when you're looking at the image, and I hope everyone's looking, it's like what I see is the same. It's not flipped, right?
Yeah, no, yes. Everyone sees it.
Let's look at the right side of Hailey Bieber, because this is the thing. Flash on camera can really alter where positioning sits. Let's look at the ends on the right side of Hailey Bieber's hair, which seems deeper. For me, that's Hailey Bieber's true reflective tone. The left is the flash of the camera, which looks a little creamier. Let's hone in on the right-hand side, okay? A little tip and thing that I love to do, and I know that this is shying a little bit away from the O3s, but adding a slight little drop of the 0.43, the point CG.
Okay.
So like the 9 CG, the 943, mixing that in with, and hear me out, mixing that in with the 8GA, the 8 gold ash.
Why?
Let me walk you through what goes on in here when I do it.
Yeah, I know, but tell us.
Yes, you know, but let me walk the audience through.
Yes.
Okay, so when you think of color that has two reflective tones that sit side by side, your first reflective tone that you see is your primary tone. Your second tone that you see is your secondary tone. Now, the percentage of what versus what is not a thing on how much you see from one to the other. It's all depending on the hair you're working with. So the hair you're working with versus your primary and your secondary tone and what reflects through. Once again, let's look at the right-hand side of Hailey's hair. It is that true golden tone, but you see that very, very, very soft hue of copper.
Yeah.
Very soft hue of it.
Yeah.
So by having an 8GA, which is an 8 gold ash, can sit quite neutral depending on the level, the reflective tone that you see.
Yeah.
And remember when I was talking about our client is blonde, right? So 8 gold ash, adding in the tiniest little drop of the 943, the 9CG, think about your color circle and think about where everything sits. If you're working with an extremely blonde hair and you're going into this, shifting slightly into that copper side is just going to bring you back to that true golden tone.
Yeah, and it'll make it brighter too, wouldn't it?
So much brighter, so much shinier. I wouldn't necessarily let my client know that I'm dropping in a pin of copper in there.
Because they would freak out. They'd be like, "What? I'm gonna have orange hair."
Absolutely. But it's really just like a gram with a 30-gram mix.
Yeah.
So I would either go in with the 831, the 8GA, or I would go and with a tiny bit of the 943, or because we're working on an 8 level, I would go in with either a 931 with the 703. So 2 parts are 931, 1 part, which is the 9GA, with 1 part the 703, the 7NG, and then little tiny drop of the 9 copper gold.
Yeah. I think these are like the way most people formulate. I think we always kind of disregard that color isn't just one reflect or one tone. And I think this is what, what you and I teach whenever we're teaching color. Think outside the box of how you formulate. Color is not flat.
No.
It's not 1D, it's not 2D, it's 3D. When light hits it, when light reflects it, it's going to look different in many different lighting situations.
Yes. And hair doesn't have a brain. So you have to manipulate the hair to understand what it needs to do.
Exactly. But as we love to say, color doesn't have a brain. You got to
color doesn't have a brain, we do.
Yeah, we got to tell the color what to do.
Exactly.
Yes. All right, should we go to the next picture?
Yes.
Wonderful. Now this, when you brought this image out, I was like, oh, this is like number one ask color at the moment over here in Europe. Mainly because we are now coming into, it's October. The leaves are currently falling. It's orange. I'm looking outside my window. It's beautiful because it's like red, orange, yellow, green at the moment.
We had sunshine today here in Melbourne, which I was very surprised about.
I'm so jealous because it's dark.
Listen, we got the rain in Copenhagen those last 2 days. That was plenty.
Yes, and I think Copenhagen was sad. That's why.
It was sad that we were leaving. Exactly.
So walk us through this, Rachel. I guess firstly, what is this color? Like, if you could name this color, what's the name of this color?
We know this is the cowboy copper.
Yes.
That everybody is loving and asking for right now.
Fall edition.
Yes.
Autumn edition.
I wanted to bring this image up because we are transitioning into summer.
Correct. Yes.
And we have had cowboy copper in its glory for a little while now. And my clients are now starting to ask, I've gone into this deep, rich, beautiful cowboy copper. How can I turn this into a summer shade?
Mm-hmm.
And this is where I wanted to talk about the framing around the front. Not necessarily the exact placement, but I wanted to walk through how you can still highlight and contour working on copper hair. Like, copper hair doesn't have to be one tone, or redheads don't have to be one tone. You can still very commercially play with highlighting and contouring.
Yeah.
Not to, plug, but if you've seen my TikTok that I posted.
That was a beautiful, Rachel.
Thank you. If you see on my TikTok, I talk
I
about
watched it
it.
multiple times now. I'm like, I miss Reg.
I know. Can I tell you that color? I love doing that color. That was so pretty.
It's beautiful, yeah.
But
You
highlighting and
sold in that model. As soon as you walked in, you were like, mine.
stole it. Stole it. I could see everyone in the room was like, oh, but I was like,
Yeah.
you.
Everyone's like,
To
God
come
damn
and
it.
sit in my chair. But I just saw because she had that. Oh, it's a mirror. The backwards mirror. I just saw that she had all this hair up in a bun, and I was like,
You know it's going to be a lot.
Yeah, you're in my chair. So I wanted to talk about the fact that coppers and reds and those more fashion shades can have highlighting and contouring too.
Yeah.
So I'm going to talk about an existing client that is cowboy copper or red and where to go from here.
Mhm.
So your client comes in and they've got their usual 6 to 8 week regrowth, and they say, I want to have a bit of fun and I want to play. I want to play a little bit. I want to create some tonal texture in the hair. Because there is existing beautiful, rich copper, red, for instance, it's more in the copper tone for this image. I love to go in with my freehand clay and my white clay and pop a lot of that color out.
So do you
Yes.
you'll color and then you'll
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. So if you see on my TikTok, Instagram, I promise I'm not plugging, but if you see on my TikTok and Instagram,
this is what it's for.
yes, my most recent color that I posted, I actually did a global glossing service first and then freehand painted over the top. So what that is doing is I'm depositing my target pigment first, getting that beautiful shine, the even tone, and really beautiful reflective color globally first. Then I go through, I blast dry the hair, and I will go through after and hand paint out pieces where I want to contour and highlight.
Now, would you blast dry it completely dry or like 80% dry? Completely dry. Yeah.
Completely dry. Yeah, completely dry. For me, I want the performance of the clay lightener.
Yes. Correct.
So, and I always keep the integrity at first rate the entire time. And with the developer that you choose, it's still really important to give it its optimum development time. You don't want to lift too quick. So slow and steady wins the race. So I like to work on dry hair, potentially with a lower developer, if I'm just pocketing out what I see. In some situations, after freehand painting and popping that out, I can just put clear straight over the top if that reflective tone is showing through beautifully. And the incredible thing is about that is that the whole time in between, there's no shift in the lightness that I've painted. Now, it's not a perfect world, right? And sometimes
No.
I wish it was, but it's not. And listen, real time, and I'm going to be real talk and I'm going to be honest, sometimes it develops faster than you think, and sometimes you push out too much pigment. Sometimes that underlining pigment isn't what you would expect it to be. It just happens, right? So this is where you go in and you play with either your permanent or your demi-liquids. And which is why I love the 934 in the permanent color. 934 with 3% as a glossing over my freehand painting is just the most beautiful, soft, coppery glow. And it really depends on how heavy or how light. If you just want a little sparkle through, the 9CG, the 934 is beautiful, as well as the 843. This is all permanent. 843, the 8CG is unbelievable for more of that intensive, but still pastelized. The 8cc, if you want to go true to that copper tone and have that really punching pocketing of color through.
It's
those
like I find it's such a beautiful tone because it's like if your client wants to be copper, this is
that's the one. But mind you, people can get a little frightened with the 8cc, the 844, and even the 7cc, the 744. But it's all in how you've placed your color. So if you've done really fine foils or really fine painting and you just once again want that little sparkle, the more intense the better,
Yes.
because then that sparkle just sort of shimmers through. Where if you're painting quite heavier pieces, it's better to be in the copper gold, the gold copper world, and pastelize it a little bit more with the 934 or the 843. That's in your permanent world. If you're going in with the demi-liquids, the 9CG, the 943 is such a beautiful copper gold. Or you can go in with the 9C or the 7CC, the 744. Or you can intermix as well with the 9GG and the 9CG, so the 933 and the 943. There's a lot of play there. If you're wanting like a rosy, really pastel, so if you want to shift, so if you've got that beautiful cowboy copper, but you want to have like rosy hues going through, you
Like
can do the 10. Yeah, around the front. You can go in with the 1035, the 10GM, with the 943, the 9CG, and then the tiniest little drop of the 6 red intensive, the 6RR, chef's kiss, with 4%.
4%. Yeah, because what do we want?
Yes.
Saturation of color. We want vibrancy. That's why we're using 4%.
Yes.
Yeah, I love. Great. So I guess cowboy copper, like everybody's obsessed with this at the moment, especially here now.
Which I'm so grateful for, because clients are just wanting warm, golden, coppery tones now. They're not afraid to do it. Even so much so where like, I'll have a client that's blonde and she'll be like, oh, that would be like a dream for me, but I'm a bit worried. And I'll say, okay, let's start with a golden blonde.
Yeah.
Let's start with a strawberry blonde.
Yeah. And then
let's work our way into it.
Warmer. Yeah. And I think when it comes to trends, a lot of colors are either for it or they're like, no, I don't want my clients to be following trends. But I always feel like as colorists, we have to be in the forefront of understanding trends and what's coming up next, because it gets our clients excited, and then like it gets me excited, it gets you excited.
Yes.
We can use other colors now,
Well, it's even that, and it's
or we get to invent new color shades.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
Yeah.
There's a level of confidence when you know what the client is asking for in terms of language, trending things. What makes your client feel at ease to know that they're in safe hands is if they come in with these like teddy bear brown, cowboy copper, and you know exactly what they mean. They just know
teddy bear brown.
I love teddy bear brown.
I think I remember Teddy Biscuit was a thing.
Teddy bear biscuit. That's an Aussie thing, doll.
It is, isn't it? I try to bring it over here. They're like, it's beige.
Yeah, that's beige. That is beige. But teddy bear brown, all those things. Like if you're not familiar with the language behind it, then they're like, oh, do you even know how to execute it?
Yes.
Yeah. So it's really important to always make sure and even if they're silly words, even if they're just beige, you just go along with it.
I do sometimes think I'm like, these names get too silly, and I'm like, let's just make it a little bit more simpler, team.
Seriously, let's just cool our jets a little.
Yeah.
But I will always be like, yeah, I love whatever the trending thing is, and then I'll be like to an assistant or whatever. I'll be like, so today we're doing, and I'll be like, gold.
Yeah.
Today we're just doing blonde.
Auburn copper or something like
Today we're just doing auburn. It's auburn brown. It's not cherry cola. It's auburn.
No.
Yeah.
All right, next color.
Love this. I wanted to talk this through.
Is the go-to blonde color everywhere. I mean, here in Copenhagen, everyone's born like this. This is what their hair looks like.
Which I saw as an Italian with this level of depth. I was very upset.
And it's everywhere, isn't it? Like just
everywhere. Beautiful, healthy blondes, natural. It's just Copenhagen. I love that.
Yeah.
So I want to talk through placement with this as well as cocktailing tones. So this is a nice gateway into someone going deeper without And mind you, I'm talking about someone that's been like a crazy blonde for a really long time, like super intense, fully saturated blonde.
Saturated, yeah.
This is a nice sort of segue into them celebrating more of their natural depth or having something that is a little bit less maintenance, but still when you look in the mirror, you look blonde. And I think that's really important too, to ask that question. When you look in the mirror, do you still want to look like a blonde? And if they're like, yep, then you know that face framing needs to happen.
Yeah.
You know, and that placement needs to be there. And that's once again like the language I talk about, where I'm like, when you look in the mirror, you're going to be really beautiful and poppy blonde. But as we work into the back, you're going to have more soft tonal texture and more of your natural color is going to be celebrated. Cool.
Nice.
So they're language that I like to talk about. So this is where your low lighting comes in. And I wanted to talk about AG because Melvin, you did ask before a popular low lighting. Another one that I love is 713, 7AG. I just feel like, once again, that's an extremely foolproof low light for a very neutral, flat low light. And that's, you know, if you've got a client that comes in and is like that natural 7 level, wants to celebrate that, or even a natural 6, and you want to add in a low light, but you don't want it to be that exact level of their natural, and you still want some shimmer of stuff. 7A3, that is pretty much 7A3. 713, 7AG is such a beautiful, extremely flat, neutral. But if you think about it, the gold being the secondary tone is redepositing the gold that's lost as you drop down.
Yeah.
So redepositing that pigment still in there, so you're not going to go murky, you're not going to go extremely flat.
That's what it is. Like, it's such a beautiful tone. Most people are afraid of it because they think
it's very flat.
It's very flat. But it's like, it's such a beautiful tone to counteract, but it's also a beautiful tone to low light because, as you mentioned, the gold in there is going to reflect light, so it doesn't have that murkiness, or like it doesn't look dull. You know?
No, not at all. It's just like you still get that
dull.
beautiful gloss going through. It's unbelievable. That as a low light, that is a zone tone, that is a root tap, that painted on the root is what I love. And then this screams 1031, 10GA.
Yes.
On the ends, like absolutely screams it. Where that is the most beautiful, bright, creamy blonde in the 10 series. 10GA is just unbelievable. If you're in a situation where your client is like, I love this, but I want to be even warmer.
Yeah.
A little pin of the 943. I love 943. A little tiny pin of the 943, the 9CG, like tiniest pin in the 10GA, the 1031, will just pop that golden warmth in there.
It's always about mixing opposite the color circle, or looking at what's opposite of that shade in the color circle. I find every time you do this, to me, it's a foolproof way to creating something so beautiful that no other colorist is going to do next door. You know, it's so customized to that specific client.
Yeah. And so that's why I'm very blessed in my salon, and I don't do my glossing services at the Basin. I'm extremely grateful.
Don't do it yourself, Rachel.
I'm very grateful. My emerging team will do it under my guidance.
And how do you find that you train them on this? Like, do you give them your favorites? Do they know what already, or do you guide them?
I guide everyone.
Okay, nice.
Because everybody deserves an opportunity to learn.
Beautiful.
So in my salon, we have a team of 34 and about 11 apprentices.
Yes.
So everybody gets an even amount of opportunity to learn. Everybody gets a chance. But you don't have the ability to touch a client until you're confident in doing it. And for me, whenever I'm like, would you like to rinse my color? They're like, oh, because it's like 1 gram of this and a drop of this and 10 grams of this. And maybe let's add 5 grams
like,
of this.
I just want to go home, Rachel, but sure.
Exactly. And they're like, I actually had a person ask me, they're like, why do you cocktail so many different things. And I'm like, because every client is different.
Yeah.
This is the end result that I want. This is the hair that I'm working with. So in order to get me from there to there, this is what I need to do. It's not just a one bottle, one tube thing. So look, if it, in some cases it is, and my life is very easy, but you know, it's really just a gram of this and a gram of that and a drop of this. And so I'm
What's the
grateful that I
most
don't
color
need to.
you've mixed in a bottle or a bowl? Like how many
How
shades?
many?
The most shades you've mixed in a bottle or a
6.
6.
6.
What was it? What did it come out to?
I think I was making like that really rose gold.
Yes. Yeah. That has so many different reflex and tones to it.
And that's the thing. There's so many different elements. There's a hue of copper, and then there's a hue of pink, and then but the pink, you know, is
Purple.
diluted red.
Yes. Yeah.
So it's adding clear, and it's adding 6 red intensive, and it's adding some copper gold in there, but it's adding some 3-5, some gold mahogany through there. Then I need the depth, so I drop a bit of that in. Like it's just
It's everywhere.
But I
yeah.
love it. I love it. Like I feel like a chef. It's so good. I'm a
Yes.
chef.
You are a chef. Yes.
Now we're going to talk into deep teddy bear brown, which is a very can go one way or the other.
Yeah,
in
I love.
reflective tones that you see.
Yeah.
So this once again is talking about you've got GM, which is so fine.
This is
We all know
GM.
what-
Sorry.
we all know what 0.35 is. I love 0.35, the gold mahogany. I love it. And the reason being is gold mahogany, depending on the level of depth that you're working with, is quite neutral. Because if you look at your color circle, you've got gold, and then mahogany is like a mix between red and violet. So it sits right in the middle. So you are still counteracting one another and getting a really beautiful tone.
Yeah.
Gold mahogany, I'm absolutely in love with.
Same.
In this situation,
As much people think it's going to be too warm.
yeah, or people feel like it's going to be a true rosy color
Yes.
too. When depending on the level of depth that you're working with, it can actually be quite a neutral color, which is really nice.
Yeah.
So in this situation, depending on the depth that you're working with, you can either go in with your clay lightener, you can either go in with your 9 levels lift, or you can use permanent if if we're working on virgin uncolored hair, which at any situation, any time that I can, I will use permanent to lighten. In a situation like this, and if a client has never colored their hair before, this is a perfect way to introduce color and contour a client with permanent, because once again, if a client has never had color before, to go from never maintaining color to coming in every 6 weeks is pretty unrealistic.
Yeah.
So working with natural untouched colored hair and introducing highlighting and contouring and really working with the client's face shape and introducing reflective tones, working with a permanent with either 6, 9 or 12% developer, depending on how many levels of lift you would like. Working in with your permanent shades just mean you're going to lift, deposit the tone that you need, the reflection that you need of color, and then that does not change at all.
Yeah.
And when I say that to a client, I'm like, the color that you leave here with is your color for as long as you would like. They were like, that's amazing.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's unbelievable.
Yeah.
So lifting, depositing, or counteracting, depending on the end result that you would like, it works in with whatever permanent that you would want to reach for. So intermixing that with, once again, your 6, 9 or 12% developer, depending on how much lift you get, and just pocketing that where it needs.
Yeah.
Oh, and it's just so shiny. And then once you've done the permanent color and it's had its full development time and you've rinsed it, you can go in with the demi-liquid clear globally.
and just
And if you go in with that globally, over that untouched coloured hair that you didn't put in the foils to lift, gets that beautiful gloss all the way through to have the illusion that the whole hair's been coloured.
Yeah, that's such a beautiful way to finish the service, because it's like you've done all the work and you kind of just want to tie it all in without changing anything.
Yes.
Clear
Yes.
is your best friend, honestly.
Yes, it is.
Yes. Yeah. Amazing. Well, Rach, we've actually made it to the full hour now. I'm kind of like, hello.
I don't want it to end.
I know. I mean, it's been so lovely, and I think it's so nice to have you over. And like, I think for me, having you over the other week, like that to me was like so good.
It was refreshing. It was just nice being together, like having all of our creative, well, not all, but most of our creative minds all under the same roof. What I loved most about it was any idea that came into our minds, we're like, we can do
Yes,
it.
let's do it.
We're here.
Yeah.
I was so creative and just so inspired, and I've come home with like, oh, let's do this, and let's like, I want to do this, and I want to play with this, and I want to do this. So it was so good, and it's just so nice to jump back on here. It feels like, you know, no time's ever lost.
No time's wasted. Yeah. Well, I want to thank you so much, Rachel, for joining me in our cocktail hour color.
Thank you.
For joining us for this session. Again, any questions you have, hit them on the comment section. Rachel and I are going to go through it. But until next time, we will see you very soon.
Bye.
Ciao.
Me quedo sola, bebiendo solo cherry cola, en la plaza bajo la farola, con dolor en mi corazón. Dime por favor, ¿cuántos años espero por mi amor? Bye bye.
That was good.